Hi everyone, my name is Sarai Gonzalez, and I chose to do the Serial Killer podcast for my crime novel assignment. And I accessed this by using the Podcast One website. And this show is produced and hosted by Thomas Wilberg Thune, and he is a 37-year-old Norwegian. I picked two story series of the numerous different serial killer stories that they offered, and their first episode was released in 2016. So I found this series from a previous class project, and I just found it very intriguing and interesting, and I chose it because I remember that the episodes were very informative and I liked that, and I really loved that it was a podcast format. So I got to enjoy listening to the host telling the different stories, and it worked out with my busy schedule because I could just put it on the go and catch up on the series. So for the Serial Killer podcast, it focused on the serial killer phenomenon, who the killers were, what they did and how, and this show makes a significant effort into exploring the serial killer's background, especially their childhood and youth. As well, it goes into detail into the killer's development and describes the murders in graphic detail to give the listeners a truthful understanding of who the killers really were and the extent of their criminal behavior. So I chose to do two series. So one of them was called Russell Williams, the Killer Colonel, and the second one was called Richard Kalinsky and the Iceman. So the Iceman was his nickname, and for Russell Williams, his nickname was the Killer Colonel. So for example, for Russell Williams, we learned a lot about his childhood, and I learned that there wasn't anything in particular that really triggered him to become a serial killer long term, but as he developed, there were really weird traits and things that he used to do that were just not normal. And for example, when he was in college, he was obsessive about playing pranks on his roommates, and the pranks went from little to just worse. And the roommate said that they would get freaked out of the things he did. He would lock them in a closet and just leave them there, and he would laugh hysterically. That's just one example of them. And as well, he was a hygiene freak, and he was just obsessive with his looks and hygiene, and that's just, I feel in serial killers, they're very obsessive. That's one of their traits. But as well, his good looks and is what many women were attracted to him because of his looks, and that allowed him to do the horrible things he did to them. So for example, when he was an adult, he started small. He started by going into the women's house, by stalking them, by stealing undergarments, and he would do things with those, and that wasn't enough for him, so he just added on to that, and he just wanted more. He would do something and he wanted more, until one day he did kidnap a lady and he did horrendous things to her. So that's just basically what the episodes consist of, but you just really know a lot about how serial killers think, and just it's fascinating to understand their thinking process and more about them. But I would recommend this podcast to anyone who loves a murder stories or serial killers. It was very interesting, but I would be careful for some people who are sensitive, because the murders were very gruesome. It goes into detail, you are really there and you're seeing the murder happen. So I would just be careful for that. If you don't like listening to that, I would not listen to the podcast. But other than that, it was very interesting, and yeah. So like I said before, I really loved listening to this podcast. I found it very fascinating and intriguing, and the main reason for that was the Norwegian host. His accent was just so unique, and it kept me up. And as well, the way he narrated the stories, he really brought life to them. One of the weaknesses, though, I would say it was that I had a hard time understanding